Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session today. We'll get started in just a moment as we still have a number of members who are coming in from the lobby over into the general webinar. So please give us just a moment as we wait for those folks to join us here. And some of you are hearing this for the second time, I'm sure, but just give us a few moments as we're waiting for folks to join in the session from the lobby where you all were just a moment ago. We'll take another 30 seconds or so to let people migrate over here into the main meeting room. All right, welcome everyone to our session today. We will get started here as we are looking at everyone who has come over from the meeting lobby over into the general session here. Thanks for your patience as we are moving through that process. Today's webinar is going to be on simplifying beneficial owner information reporting, or BOI or BOIR. You might have heard it a couple of different ways, but we're going to talk about how you can make sure you are in compliance with the new regulations from FinCEN regarding beneficial owner information reporting. My name is Ed Pratt. It says Edward here, but call me Ed, please. If I get called Edward, I'm usually in trouble. I am a co-founder and chief operating officer here at ZenWork, which is the parent company of Tax 1099. I've been working in various compliance-related businesses for the last 25 years or so, and have helped a lot of clients work through difficulties, whether that's in tax or HR or various compliances with FinCEN. I am currently not living in Conway, Arkansas. This is a little bit of an out-of-date slide in that respect. I am currently living in Maryland with my family out here, and my wife's family is here. And so we have been in Arkansas, we've been in Milwaukee, we've been in North Carolina, we've been in South Carolina, we've been in Pennsylvania, we've been in Maryland. So we move around a little bit. Usually for good reasons, though. So that is me, and I hope that you will get some good information out of today's session. A couple of housekeeping items. There is a handout that is consisting of these slides. Some of these slides will have some reference points in them that you may want to look at, and so you can download those using the toolbar in Zoom. There is either a resources icon there, or there will be in the More section a resources icon in that location where you'll be able to pull those that down as a PDF presentation. So please do take a look there for that handout if you are looking for it. Also, the Q&A, a couple of people have found that already to request a handout, and so thanks for that. But if you haven't seen the Q&A, there is a channel there where you can drop questions in through the question and answer panel, and we'll be able to get to those either as we're going through the session or during the session. If you do raise your hand, I won't be able to provide a microphone to you, but you can certainly enter your question through the Q&A panel. And there will be a recording available. This recording will be sent automatically to you going out through the Zoom tool that we use. And so you'll get that recording link via your email that you registered with. Quick disclaimer, so we are providing a lot of information in the context of this session. However, we are not intending it to be, strictly tax, legal, or accounting advice. If you do have a specific question pertaining to your specific needs, please do consult your own tax, legal, and accounting advisors before you do any transactions, specifically in this situation with the beneficial owner information reporting. So let's look at our agenda for today. We have a number of things we're going to talk about, hopefully clarifying some of the questions that we'll be offering or that have come up related to the BOI information. So please do take a look at that option. And I've got a couple of people who are saying they can't find the handout. So just to touch base on that real quickly, if you again go into the More, it's the three dots on the right hand side. You'll see the little icon there. There'll be a resources tab there. In the resources, there's three tabs inside the resources, and one of them should be the handout manual. So hopefully you are able to find that. I don't think I'm able to give any more specific instructions than that. That was what I was given to give you guys as guidance for that. But if you can't find it there, you can follow up with our support team, support@tax1099.com, and they can be able to provide you with the handout manual. So a few things we're going to cover in today's session. So again, BOI is a new reporting construct for the United States. It is something that has been in place in certain overseas locations for a number of years, whether under the beneficial owner information reporting category or under the universal beneficial owner or ultimate beneficial owner category, the UBO. So you may have heard that term as well. They're really interchangeable, BOI, UBO. We will use BOI because that is the structure that the FinCEN organization has set up. We'll talk about what is required inside of that of being able to be in compliance with the beneficial owner information reporting. We'll also look at some of the key dates that you need to know. There is a phase-in period for beneficial owner information reporting, and so we'll talk about what that is, and then what future situations will possibly apply as well. And so it'll be important to remember those key dates. There are penalties, of course, if you fail to comply with BOI reporting. This is nothing official, of course, but I've often seen when certain requirements are being brought forth and they're new requirements, that there is often some flexibility in the initial phase of that in regard to penalties. So again, I'm not providing any legal advice or anything like that. You should definitely follow along with your beneficial owner information reporting as quickly as you can. But if you do find yourself in a penalty situation and it is a new thing that they've revealed, just like the BOI reporting is, sometimes there is some consideration given to that by the agencies. We'll talk about some ways to gather the information and verify your beneficial owner information, bringing all that into account. And we'll talk about how Tax 1099 can help you with that process as well. And then again, hopefully we'll have some time for some questions and answers at the end of the session. So real quickly, I just want to bring up a quick poll question here for everyone in attendance. And this will just be for me to get a sense of the audience. You can certainly select more than one of these options because more than one of these may pertain to you, but please do take a look at the question that should have popped up on your screen there and answer to at least one of the 4 categories of information that you have provided there. All right, so I'm going to share this poll with you so you can see what people responded to in the various circumstances of the poll here. So take just another 5 seconds or so if you haven't responded yet, and I'll end the poll and then I'll share the results with you. I'll have to put my glasses on so I can actually see the results here. So give me just a moment to do that as well. All right, so I'm going to end the poll here and share the results with you. And so many of you out there are a owner of a business, or at least a partial owner of a business, and so you are needing to do the filing yourself as you are looking at doing the beneficial owner information reporting. Many of you also are either CPAs, you're a legal professional, you may be an administrative assistant, even at an office who has been told by your boss that you need to attend this session so you can figure out what this BOI thing is and if it applies to you or not. And then many of you also said that you do want the recording. So we will have the recording that comes out to you after this session, so you'll be able to access that information in an easy manner. It'll come out via email, and you'll have a link that'll be able to access that, where you'll be able to access that. All right, so thanks for participating in that. It gives me a good idea of where people are coming from in relation to this session. And with that, we're going to start going through our information, give a little background on beneficial owner information reporting. So as we built this webinar for covering beneficial owner information reporting, we did a lot of research. We looked through a bunch of the instructions and some of the information that's out there from FinCEN. FinCEN, I'm just going to call it FinCEN each time. You can picture it as that FINCEN there. That is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. It's not an agency that many of you probably have had dealings with before in the past, but it is responsible for a lot of enforcement of financial crimes. And so think about things like the Russian war in Ukraine, and you'll see headlines where, you know, so and so from Russia has been put onto a sanctions list, and you know the United States is not allowed to do business with that person any longer. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network would consider any dealings with that individual to be a crime, and so they may be the person or the department from the United States Treasury that's going after people who are laundering money, for example, or doing anything else that really is a financial crime that impacts the United States government or the United States as an entity. So they are looking to safeguard the financial system, and that can be through any number of different enforcement mechanisms. Another one that we deal with here at Tax 1099 is the FinCEN 114. It's the FBAR, FBAR, the Foreign Bank Account Reporting tax, or not tax, but requirement that is required if you have ownership of a bank account in a foreign country that exceeds $10,000 in balance at any point in time in the year. You need to report that to FinCEN. And so they are responsible for a number of different things like that. And beneficial owner information reporting is the newest thing that they are responsible for as of this year. So who is a beneficial owner? It's just what it sounds like, right? It's someone who controls a business or an asset or an entity. It might not even be in your name specifically, but you control that other entity. You know, if you have a multi-tier structure organization where you have a holding company at the top and multiple other entities below, well, if you own the fourth entity down here and you own the top entity up here, then you are responsible for the reporting for that fourth entity down below. So all of that is to say that this ownership, this beneficial ownership, is whenever you, as an individual or an entity, have income or decision-making power in a company that is a going concern in the United States. How much of a company does a beneficial owner possess? You know, there's a 25% threshold that's a common criterion that's used to determine that beneficial ownership. If I own 24.5% of something, I would probably make a report and claim myself as a beneficial owner just to avoid any problems. But that 25% threshold is where, you know, the normal breakdown takes place. And so that can mean that if you are in a sort of partnership where you own you know, 1/4 of the business and 3 other people own the other 3/4 of the business, each of them owning 25%, then you have 4 people who are beneficial owners of that entity. We'll look at a couple of examples later that will get us through some more of these guidelines that will help us understand where the beneficial owner information reporting requirements come from. And so what is the information that you need to provide? Well, it's the identifying information for you. And so if you are an individual, it's going to be, for me, it would be Edward Walker Pratt Jr., because that is my full name, my legal name, and it would be my social security number if I were the owner of one of these entities. If I am owning it as an S corporation, for example, I may be reporting some entity level information, but I need to be reporting my ultimate beneficial information, and I am the ultimate beneficial owner, and so I'd be reporting my specific information. The company applicant is just who is preparing or filing the creation or the first registration. So I mentioned that you may have some folks here who are CPAs. You may be legal professionals who are helping clients to do this work. You may be an administrative assistant. That's a company applicant. That's the person who is actually preparing the information. So the beneficial owner can also be the company applicant. That makes sense, right? If I own a small business, it's just me. I'm the only person who's working for the business. Then I may be doing the application myself, and I'm also the beneficial owner. If I own a business and you know, my wife works with me, she may be doing the company application. She may be the one who's filling that out, but I'm the beneficial owner of that information. I may have my CPA do that for me as well. Does your organization fall under the BOIR mandate? Well, it depends. And I've already had one question come in that's asking, you know, is this an official requirement? Is it actually something I have to do? And the answer that I can give you is, I don't know. Right now, it is an actual requirement that is required by FinCEN. However, when you organize a company, you're organizing that company generally through your Secretary of State in the state where you live, or you may do it through another state, Nevada, Delaware. They have very popular programs for doing business registration in those particular states. Well, each of those states may have some jurisdiction governing whether that is required or not. So it's going to be something that we all have to pay attention to over the next, year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, who knows how long that may go on when people are contesting the process. But what we're going to focus on in this session is, according to the rules that have been printed for us through the FinCEN organization, does your organization fall under the mandate, the requirement to do this filing? Do keep in mind, that there are some court cases out there that may change how this goes, but also keep in mind that eventually it'll probably happen. This is something that happens across the world to prevent people from doing money laundering activities and so forth. And so most of us are going to be required to do a filing at some point in time, whether it's right now or later. But let's focus on what the rules are as currently constituted for falling under this beneficial owner information reporting. So the reporting company is simply the entity or the organization that has to give the information about its beneficial owners. So that could be any type of different entity structure that you'll see here in just a little bit. I'm going to focus on, LLCs and maybe some S corps and things like that. But just know that there are some additional requirements that may fall in, and there are some exemptions as well. We'll look at a list of exemptions here as we go through the slides as well. There are two types of reporting companies. There's domestic and foreign, and you can really kind of think of that as U.S. or not U.S. I do want to point out that where it says the United States, it's got a line here about filing a document for your company with a Secretary of State or any similar office in the United States. That language is there mostly to cover Native American reservations, where you may have different types of requirements and regulations in general, but this is still something that is required to be reported, even if you are part of a tribe and do need to file this information on the corporation that you are working with. Foreign companies are outside of the United States. They have formed under the laws of a foreign country, but they are registered in the United States. And so there's going to be some differences in what needs to be reported for those types of entities, whether it's domestic or foreign. I mentioned there are some exempted categories. I'm not going to read through all of these exempted categories. I think that would be extremely boring. However, it is in the slides. And again, if you're not able to get those slides through the webinar service here, I'll have someone email those out to the list of folks who are attending here today. So you'll be able to get that information. But you can see that a lot of these are dealing with securities and bank and money and so forth and so on. That's because these guys have other ways that they have to report this beneficial ownership information. So if I am a broker dealer in securities, I've got all these other ways that I have to fulfill information in order to be considered a licensed person working as a broker dealer in securities. If I'm a credit union or a bank, I've got all kinds of things that I have to do. It's much more onerous than the beneficial owner information reporting that we're talking about here today. Not only these 9 are exempted categories, there are also additional exempted categories. And so I do want to highlight the tax exempt entity that's there. If you're working with a nonprofit organization that is a true tax exempt entity, you've gone through the whole process. You're not just, setting up shop and saying I'm a tax exempt entity. You've got exemption certificates and so forth. You are in an exempted category for that. So if you have any question whatsoever about, do I fall under one of these exempted categories or not, that's a place where you want to definitely seek some of that tax and legal advice that we talked about in the disclaimer. I'm not going to make that determination for you. You probably don't want to make that determination. You want to make sure that it's correct when you make that determination. And so you want to ask for some professional advice on whether you fall into one of the exempted categories or not. Obviously, if you are a venture capital fund advisor, you probably know you fall under an exempted category. If you definitely fall into one of these things, then you're in an exempted category and you may not have to ask that advisor. But if you're a small business owner and you're not sure, definitely check before you do anything that may come to some issue with you. We'll talk about penalties in a little bit. Let's talk about those examples that we talked about. So sole proprietorship is a very common organizational structure. You might hear pass-through ownership instead of sole proprietorship. You can have any type of business and be a sole proprietorship. If I just go out and start a food truck and it's just me working there, I'm the owner, maybe I hire somebody to help me cook. I'm a sole proprietor because I own it. I'm the only person who's really doing anything for that. I'm making all the decisions. The income is all mine. The expenses are mine. The risk is mine. It's all mine. So I am the owner of that sole proprietorship, and I would be reporting as a beneficial owner of that business. I would need to make this report that we're talking about here in our session today. There's also partnerships. So think about a legal partnership or think about any other partnership. It doesn't have to be legal, but any type of business where you get together with another person, you each own 50%, or you each own 25%, or if there's three of you, you own 33 and a third percent. However it works, you are a beneficial owner if you are sharing the ownership and control and the profits of that partnership. So you want to make sure that you are both, or all three, or all four, are reporting your ownership, your beneficial ownership under that entity. If you have 5 owners and three of them are 25% owners, so that's 75%, and then the other two are splitting the last 25%, 12.5%. Remember earlier we talked about 25% being the threshold that you want to do the reporting under. Seek advice if you're concerned about maybe those 12.5% partners. Do they need to do something? Do they need to make this filing? There's not there won't be any sort of over reporting penalty, right? If you're concerned, you're one of those 12.5% partners and you're concerned that you may need to make this filing, will it be safe to go out there and make that filing? They're not going to penalize you for making a filing if you didn't quite hit that 25% threshold. Corporations. So corporations can have different types of shareholders. Still, any individual who's owning a substantial percentage of the corporation's shares is going to need to file that beneficial owner information report. So, and I don't know if this is true anymore. I don't keep up with the 10Ks and stuff, but like Mark Zuckerberg, he owned Facebook. He started Facebook, and then he sold a bunch of pieces to other people who are shareholders, who are private equity and so forth. They went public eventually. He still owns a huge number of the shares of Meta. It's now called, not Facebook, but he still owns a huge number of shares. Well, if he owns more than 30% of it, he is a beneficial owner that might need to do some reporting here. Keep in mind the exemptions, we talked about before. So there's possibly different rules that they may fall under, but just thinking as an example, it can be a large corporation. Even if you are still the beneficial owner of that corporation, you have a requirement to do some reporting on that. And then there's also holding company. So I talked real quickly about a holding company example. A holding company is simply where you may accumulate other companies underneath that holding company. You may have a structure where you have a holding company at the top, and then that holding company owns multiple businesses. Where you're looking at here, ABC Holdings, this person is a beneficial owner of ABC Holdings, and they indirectly own XYZ Manufacturing inside of their holding company. So they are under a beneficial owner need of doing the reporting because they are that beneficial owner for the structure of that company. We have a little quiz. I'm not going to give you the quiz now. The link is here, but you can go in, you can look at that report, and you can go on to Tax 1099 and just look up at the top section there. There's a link for beneficial owner information, and it will take you out, and you'll be able to look through the quiz that's here. If you need to create a registration to do it, it's free to create a registration to do it. We're not going to charge you anything to do that. So you can go in and take a look at that. And it just kind of walks you through the steps. And it says, are you one of these exempted categories? Do you own this much of the business? It'll take you through that process that we've just gone through, but it'll take you through it. You're answering the question specifically for your situation or your scenario. Let's talk about some of the dates for the BOI report submissions. I mentioned that this has really just come into play as of this year. And it's come in this year because of regulations that have been set up in the past. This is the first year that the requirement is live. And so if you have a company that was created or registered prior to January 1st of this year, you've got until January 1st of next year to do that report. So I created a company in 1997. I've got until January 1st of next year, really December 31st, right? I want to make sure that nothing's going to be open on January 1st. I want to make sure I get it done in time. I'm going to file a BOI report if I'm the beneficial owner for that company that I created in 1997. If I created a company in 2023, same thing. I'm going to do the beneficial owner report. So think about local companies in your area, right? There's restaurants that have been in business for 40 years and 70 years and whatever. It's as established in, and it's got that line on their door there because they're proud. They've been around for a long time. They might not have thought about a whole lot of this stuff since then, but they do have a requirement now to file that beneficial owner information report because they were created or registered prior to January 1st of 2024. That takes a whole bunch of companies there, right? Because there's, I don't know, 300 million entities in the United States. And so many of those were created or registered before January 1st, 2024. If you registered or created your company this year, so within the 365 calendar days of 2024, you need to report your beneficial owner information within 90 days after receiving actual or public notice that your company's creation or registration is effective. So, when you go on to the Delaware site and you fill out your registration paperwork and you push all your data in there, they send you a letter that says that your company has been registered. It's all set and you're good to go, and it'll give you the date there. 90 days is how long you have to do that. So if this happened on February the 1st, you're already outside of your 90 days of doing the report. I don't say that to scare anybody because, again, generally, when there is a new requirement like this, you have a little bit of flexibility in that time. You don't want to trust that, but you have a little bit of flexibility in that time. So if this is the first time that you're hearing about beneficial owner information reporting, you've not heard about it before, you registered a company on February the 1st, you need to go ahead and start looking at how to do your beneficial owner information report so that you are doing it as quickly as possible, even though you may be outside that 90-day guideline. Thinking back to some of the other circumstances that FinCEN has dealt with, I mentioned the foreign bank account reporting in the past, and we have a tool that helps clients file the foreign bank account report, the FinCEN 114. When they introduced that back in 2010, I don't know, it's been a while, it's been a few years. It took a little while for them to get through all the process. They gave some amnesty information because there's people who have large bank accounts overseas that they've never reported because it's just a bank account. It's not necessarily they're making income or anything from it. It's just a bank account where they hold some funds. So they didn't realize that it really applied to them for doing that FBAR report. So they were granted some additional time before really heavy penalties started to come in. When they did the penalties, though, they were extensive penalties. There's been cases that have gone all the way up to the Supreme Court over potential $1 million penalties that some of the clients have been enforced with, as they weren't paying attention to those FBAR regulations. They weren't really following what they were supposed to do, and they didn't act in those amnesty periods to make sure that they were kosher. There's even now one element of the FBAR report that is not functional yet because it's not enforced yet, because it's still kind of undergoing some tweaks and turns. So this may turn out to be the same way, but it may not. So you want to get your beneficial owner information report done as quickly as you can within those 90 days if you did it for this year. And if not, you want to do it as quickly as you can after that, because every day that you wait could be an additional penalty that adds up and could be detrimental to you. So what happens going forward? So going forward, the time frame you want to remember is 30 days. So starting January 1st of 2025, if you register a corporation, or if you register an entity, I should say, then you have 30 days to report that entity through the FinCEN BOI report. Updates or corrections that need to be made to beneficial ownership information also need to be submitted within 30 days. That applies even now. So this last bullet point is a little bit different than the ones we talked about before. So we've got 4 bullet points that we've gone through. The first 3 were related to when was your company registered or created. If it was registered before January 1st, 2024, you've got this year to get it submitted. You want to do your beneficial owner information reporting this year. If it was done this year, you've got 90 days from that official registration or creation date to make sure that that is put into place. And if you're doing it next year, you've got 30 days to do that as you are looking at the timeframes for those new filings. Updates or corrections, though, you've got 30 days. That even applies for now. So if you have a company or you have a client who did a registration, in 1997, like I said before, they just reported their information this year. If a change takes place in that beneficial owner information, then they need to do a change report or an update report to make those changes. They've got 30 days to do that from when the change happened. So let's say it's one of those mom and pop shop type of restaurants. They started in 1997. They've been going great, but the mom and pop are getting a little older and they want to retire. They're going to pass on ownership. They're going to sell the ownership to their children. So when they do that selling of the ownership to their children, when that change takes place, then the children become the beneficial owners, replacing the mom and pop who are the original owners. 30 days. When that change takes place, they've got 30 days to make that report of the new or changed beneficial owner information as they're going through that change in circumstance that is requiring some additional beneficial ownership information to be filed. So these are what we have for the deadlines, and you can. I deal with a lot of tax stuff, and so tax deadlines are usually specific dates, right? If I paid somebody to do some work for me for my company in 2004, then I need to give them a 1099 NEC form. I need to send that to them by January the 31st. I need to send it to the IRS by January the 31st. I might have paid them back in February, but I've got till next year because it's a tax year process. This isn't a tax year process. This is a when did the company, the entity, get registered or created. That's where the deadline comes from. And that deadline is important for you to know and understand how they fall differently across the multiple years as this framework is coming online. So let's look at some penalties. And again, I don't want to scare anybody with penalties, but they're written into the statutes, right? They're written into the regulations. This is what the penalties are. Keep in mind that if you fall under a penalty, if you get a letter that says, hey, you should have done this, at whatever date, and you failed to do that, and so we're going to charge you $10,000, you don't just want to pay them $10,000. You want to seek assistance in getting that, looking at a potential abatement, looking at how maybe an attorney can help you come back to the IRS to FinCEN and say, this is my client didn't mean to not file in a timely manner. They had this extenuating circumstance. So if this ever happens to you or to one of your clients, again, not tax advice, not legal advice, but just a person-to-person kind of advice, it's a starting point for that letter that you get. There's criminal, there's civil penalties. You're probably not going to fall under a criminal penalty unless you're doing something really terrible. But if you are doing your due diligence and you're doing the work that is expected by FinCEN to try to comply with this requirement, then you're going to be looked on more favorably than if you're just somebody who's sitting out there and saying, well, I'm not going to give you any information because I don't want to. I don't think you need this information, and so I'm not going to give it to you. That's non-compliance, and they're not going to look very kindly on that. So try to be in compliance as much, try to be in the dates for compliance as much as you can. And if you, again, have any sort of contention or problem with the working through that information, then work with an advisor, work with a legal advisor to help you go through why you have that problem and with doing the filing and what your response might be if you do get a penalty. As I said earlier, in answer to one of the questions, there is still some, and there will continue to be some back and forth in the courts regarding this requirement, and is it truly something that is going to be enforced as we go forward? We don't know, and no one knows right now until those court cases work their way through the court system what that will look like. So if you're relying on a opportune court case to go your way that somebody else is filing, and you think, well, maybe I'll just wait to see how that court case goes. Maybe that's fine, but maybe it's not. And so you want to pay attention to your needs and your requirements and your hopeful avoidance of penalties more so than you want to pay attention to what somebody else is doing in the court. You want to pay attention to what's going on in the courts, but you don't want to rely on that court to provide you with an escape window when it may not happen. All right, so we've got some slides in here about how to do this process through Tax 1099. I'm going to give another quick poll here. I had another question earlier about if this is qualified for CPE credit, and this is not qualified for CPE credit, but this is just a yes/no question to determine if you are or are not currently a user of Tax 1099, because I'm going to show you in Tax 1099 what this looks like. There are some slides, again, which it sounds like many of you can't access because you can't get into the resources tab. We'll send them to you, but there are some slides that are in this deck as well that will help you see where some of this information is covered and used inside of Tax 1099. All right, so this is, again, just a simple yes/no question, and I'm going to give you another 5 seconds or so to do a response, and then we'll show the results again. Oh, okay, good. Couldn't remember if I muted myself or not. All right, so I'm going to end this poll and show you the results. And it looks like a large number of you out there are currently existing Tax 1099 users, which is great. Thanks for coming to our session. And those of you who are not, again, if you wanted to do that little quiz to see if this applies to you or not, and you need to create a registration, do that. Doesn't cost anything to create a registration. And then you can answer yes to this question next time. All right, so quickly to move on and to look at some of these slides, I am actually going to show us how this looks in Tax 1099 as opposed to just reading the slides from you. But basically know that we have built some ways to work with you in completing this information. And there's different components of the information that are going to be needed. There's the company information, and there's the beneficial owner information. There's the potential for having the person who's doing the report information in there. All of those are included inside of Tax 1099. If you're already a user, though, and your company or your clients, if you're an accounting firm, are already using Tax 1099, their information is there for the company. That's the payer information inside of Tax 1099. It'll just pull over. You don't have to fill that component in. In addition, to gather the beneficial owner's information, if, again, you're working as an accounting firm, there's a process inside of Tax 1099 to gather that information from that beneficial owner. So you don't have to try to make it up or whatever. Just think, oh, well, I think it's Ed Pratt, and it's really Edward Pratt, because you call me Ed all the time. So if you are working through that process, you can actually just gather this information using a link, a tool that I'll show you inside of Tax 1099. We, like with all of our other forms, we track the filing status. So we're hooked into FinCEN. We know if it's accepted or if it's rejected. And if it's rejected, we know why. We can come back to you and give you the requirement that maybe was missed as you're going through that process. And then for updating or correcting the reports, we've got all that built into the system as well. And particularly if you are an accountant who's dealing with a lot of clients, or you're a legal service who's dealing with a lot of clients, you want them all in one place. And so we have that built into Tax 1099, just like we do with all of our other types of forms. So let me bring up one of our websites here, or one of our logins, I should say, to our website. This is Tax 1099, and I've gone in here and I've done a test submission. I haven't submitted it yet because it's all fake information. You can see from the name of my company that it's fake information. But if I wanted to file a new form, I would just click on the File BOI, and I would go through the prompts that it's going to take me through to do that. I get to pick any of the companies that I'm already working with. So I mentioned before, if you are an existing user of Tax 1099, which a large number of you are, this will be the list of your payers. You may only have one. If you are a client of Tax 1099 and you file, 5 1099s a year or 6 W-2s a year or whatever, you may only have the one payer of information that is there, and that's totally fine. If you're an accountant, you'll have all the information here, and you can search to find the particular one that you're looking for up here, or you can just scroll through the list and find the one that you want. If your company's not here, you have a couple of things you can do. You can add the new reporting company. That's just going to open a dialog box for you and take you through putting in the information for that company. If you have a large number of forms that you need to file, you have a lot of clients that you need to do this for, then there's an import process that you can use over on our payer management page, where you can go in and you can pull in all of your clients' information. Some of the accounting firms that I've talked to about BOI filing, they have, let's say, 8,000 clients that they have. They might do 1099s for half of those clients. So they've got 4,000 clients who are already in Tax 1099. Well, that's great for those 4,000 clients. However, they've got 2,000 of those total 8,000 clients that are single member, sole proprietor LLCs. They do tax filings for. They're not doing 1099s for them. Maybe they're not doing payroll stuff for them. So they still want to offer them the ability to do the BOI report. So they come in and they do the import process for their payers inside of Tax 1099 for those 2,000 beneficial owners, and they can bring that information in a more automated process than doing it in a step-by-step process. So let me go back to the one that I was looking at here, my 1099-R test company. This is the one that I've already created. I'm just going to edit it so I can go through the process here. So because I've already got this information in here, you'll see up here at the top, we're going to walk through these different steps, these different phases, if you will, of the report. So there's the reporting company information, right? So I mentioned that. If you don't have the information, you can fill it out as you go. But if you do have the information, then it's all going to be filled in for you and located here. As you go through that, you'll see some questions that come up. What's the jurisdiction or formation of the first registration? That's a country. So it's either domestic or it's foreign. Remember, we talked about that being one of the distinctions. United States of America is what it is for this one. But if it is a foreign country that this entity was organized in, you can indicate that information as well. I've got a state of formation. So you see here, this one was Alabama. The tribal jurisdiction of formation is a separate category. So if you do have tribal communities that you are working with that may have formed entities on a reservation, then you have the ability to enter that instead of the state of formation information. So as I mentioned previously, it says Secretary of State or other similar agency in the US. That's where this comes into play, is with the tribal jurisdiction information. I don't have anything for foreign reporting company because I have a domestic reporting company. So you'll see that this is still loaded to select. I don't need to select anything here because it's not going to be a requirement for me to file. And then this is just the address of my company, the entity that I'm working with. So I've done the reporting company information here. I'm going to click next. And you'll see, sorry, what did I forget to do? I did forget to do something. Oh, there you go. So I didn't do something there. There we go. So now I've got it entered there. I've got my EIN. And so now I should be able to click next. The filing information here is going to be what type of report that you are doing. What type of name are you entering here? There's various pieces of information that are going to be listed here, and there's the date prepared that'll be automatically filled as you're going through with today's date. I'm doing an initial report, so I'm going to click that initial report, and when I do that, you'll see some things here get blocked out. Because I'm doing an initial report, then I don't need to file any of the changes of information that may be in play if I'm doing a correcting of a prior report. So prior report, I think I said prior. So you'll see that boxes open up for you as needed as you're going through the process of doing this. I'm going to keep it at the initial report and click next. And then this is the company applicant. This is the person who is creating this filing. I've created an applicant for existing reporting company. It's going to clear all of that information, and that just means that I am the person who is doing this. I am the existing company that's here in the report that's adding this. I can add an applicant if I need to, if that's something that I am going through. If I deselect the checkbox there, I can add the applicant and go through the process of filling out this information here, giving all of the information that is required in the process. I'm going to leave it here at my existing reporting company. And it gives you a warning that just says, just know it's going to be cleared or disabled. You won't be able to enter in any of the additional information there, and that's okay. I'm going to click next. And this is where the beneficial owner comes in. So I can add the beneficial owner here myself if that is something that that I want to do, or I can send the information out to someone to fill in the information here. I can put in the request that's coming here, and I can source that information. I can send that information out by choosing a box that I'll show you here in just a moment to put this information in. Give me just a sec. Out here, that's the email. So if this is coming to our support box, I gave this one to you earlier, support@tax1099.com, and that is not how you type support. Always good to double check. Support@tax1099.com. Then they are going to get an email that is going to ask them to fill in this information. So this is where, as an administrator, as a legal professional, as a CPA, I may not have all the information at hand that I need in order to do this for this particular beneficial owner. So I want that person to send me the information. All I need to have is their email address. They'll receive an email. They'll be able to go through and fill out this information. There is another piece down here that I want to point out, and this is where it also can be important to know how this process works. There is a form of identification and an issuing jurisdiction. So if you've ever signed up for, let's say, a bank account online, maybe you wanted to get one of those high yield savings accounts, and you went on to one of the websites, Ally or Marcus or whatever, and you registered for creating a savings account online. You are probably familiar with doing this process. You've had to put in some type of identifying document that shows who you are. Your driver's license, for example. Your passport is another one that can be put in there. This information is how the FinCEN organization is tracking and making sure that you are who you say you are. So just like when you do a bank account, there's a know your client or a know your customer process that the bank has to go through in order to be perceived, or in order to be assured of not participating in sorts of money laundering schemes. By knowing your customer, then you are able to get that account online. You're not walking into the bank to get it. You're doing it in an online process. Very similar concept to what you're seeing here. You have to add an attachment, or if you've done this email process that I'm doing, the attachment goes out to, or the whole email goes out to that person. They open the documentation page, they fill in the information, and they're able to upload their attachment there. And by the way, it does say where it's coming from. So it says it comes from Tax 1099, but it's also listing the company information that we saw previously as part of the process of collecting this information. So you will want to, if you're using this tool, you'll want to make sure that your client or the person receiving that information is aware that it is a safe send. It's something that's been that you have sent yourself. You're not, it's not somebody who's fishing for information, but you will want to let them know it's okay to send the information in there. Now, what if you have 3 owners, or you have 4 owners? I just filled in 1, right? But I can add the new beneficiary information for each one of those owners. So if I have a company, an entity that has 4 owners who each own 25% of the entity, I'm able to add the 4 different beneficiaries here and include them in the process. They can each send their own information in, and when that information comes, then I'll be able to do the final submission of this form for the BOI report. I'm going to choose just the 1 because that's where I am starting from here. And so now I've got a review option. These are collapsed just off the start here, but if you open each one of them, you will see all of the items that you filled in. Or in cases where you didn't need to fill something in, they'll just be highlighted in the yellow there because we chose certain aspects of this that didn't require some information to be filled in. Now here you see I still have a lot of information missing. That's because I didn't do the submission of that information through the email yet. I'm capturing that information from the email process. And so here on my final page is just a submission of information where I can go through. I'm putting in all of the information that's going to be required here. So if I just put in my information there, just click, and I would obviously fill out Edward. That's me as the person who's submitting either for my business myself, or I am doing this on behalf of the reporting company. I'm a CPA. I'm a legal person who is doing this process. I'm the administrative assistant who's doing this process. Then I can click this. I'm not submitting anything here, by the way. Submit is creating the form. You'll see that's still in a not submitted status, because in order to finalize this process, I have to check my boxes here and I have to go through and do the actual process. You can see here there's a submit form there. I can pull it up and see here in the view form. I can delete it if it's something I determine I don't need. I can also edit it. So let's say that as an accountant, I sent out the email request to my client and I asked them to fill this information out. And they said, I'm not going to do that. I will come to your office. I will give you the information you need. I will give you my driver's license, whatever the situation is. Then you can sit with them, or you can do it after they leave, and you can go through the edit process and just add the information that they need to do for that particular item. If I'm ready to submit, then I've got a submit option here, and I go through the process. There are two options that you'll see here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just want to mention the difference in these two, because we've had a couple of people who've been confused about it. I can pay for the single filing. That means this one new filing that I'm doing for this entity, I can pay $45 to do that submission. The unlimited lifetime free filing subscription for one business or EIN, that's for this particular EIN, is $175. That means if it's one of those organizations that goes through a lot of changes for whatever, they're buying and selling, they're bringing new partners in, they're getting ready to transfer ownership to their children, whatever their situation might be. If you do the second one here, then you don't have to pay again for doing that updated filing, for doing the changes. Think of it like a corrected filing for a 1099 or a W-2C, if you're familiar with those from employees who have gotten paid from a company. This is the corrected version of that. You don't have to do this. You can just pay us the $45 to do the filing. And then the next time that they come in, if they made a change, it'll be $45 again to do that filing. That's only $90. I wasn't a math major, but that's less than $175. So the $175 can be very good for you if you have people who are going through lots of potential changes, but it can also be overkill. You don't necessarily need that. You just need to pay for the filing for that company for the first time. It's going to take 4 changes really for you to get to the $175, or 3 changes, 1 new one and 3 changes for that $175 to make sense. So I just wanted to mention that as we go through this process. And then the final step here is just putting in the information here. There's a sales tax calculation here. I think I've got, my piece there. And then if I just put in my email address, calculate the sales tax, it comes up. And because of my state, I don't know sales tax apparently. So that's great. I don't know anything about sales tax really to speak of, except that I pay it when I need to. So there's a payment process that you'd go through, and then you can either have prepay funds that I have here, or it would bring a credit card up for you to go through the process. That's basically it. So I know I talked through a lot of different steps there, and it sounds like I went through a whole lot of information, and I did, right? I went through a lot of different steps. The company information, the person who's doing the report, the beneficial owner themselves, the review of the information, all of that is contained in there, and it is definitely different steps that you go through to do the filing. However, again, if you have worked with Tax 1099 in the past, you will have some of that already in place for your clients and your payers. I'm going to skip through these next few slides because these are just covering what I've talked about. It goes into some more detail on some of the fields that are here. So just be aware of that there is some additional information that's contained in the slides, which again, I know you don't have. We'll send it out to you. We'll make sure that you do get a copy of that. Even if you're doing the correction, it talks about the FinCEN ID. I didn't spend any time on the FinCEN ID. There is a FinCEN ID. It's again, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. They issue this to individuals who file beneficial owner information. Because this is new this year, you're not going to have a whole lot of people that you know who are going to have a FinCEN identifier at this point in time. They can go and get the FinCEN identifier. If they have a FinCEN identifier, it basically replaces the need to enter everything else for the beneficial owner. That identifier, like your EIN, is used by the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network in this case to track you and know who you are. And so you don't have to enter all of your name, date of birth, and so forth and so on. So it can be a shortcut to that process, but you would need to have this FinCEN ID issued by FinCEN, and they have a whole process for doing that FinCEN ID process. All right, and again, just kind of going through where you see some of these slides. There's some information that's there. We have about 5 minutes left in our session, so I have a number of questions that have come up, and I'll see how many of them I can actually answer. And several of them, thank you, are about the resources, not being able to find that information. So apologize for that again, but we'll get that sent out to you. I've got a question about if all LLC members are 20% ownership, so 5 owners, I guess, at 20% each, do we need to report all members? The threshold, remember, is 25%. I don't think, again, you'll get in trouble for doing any sort of filing for the members who are 20% or less, but seek that type of tax advice, legal advice, if you want some additional information. Got a question about, is this only for companies which file 1099s? No, it's definitely can be more companies than file 1099s. It can also be less companies, fewer companies than file 1099s. There are companies that are banks, for example. We have a number of banks who file their 1099s through us, the interest and the dividends and so forth and so on. They would be exempted from the classification, the requirement to do the BOI reporting. However, they do the 1099s. There's a question about, do nonprofits have to file? They were listed in our exemptions as well. More questions about the slides. We'll get those to you. Let's see. Sorry, I'm scrolling through trying to find the ones that are not related to the slides. Okay, another question about the threshold. So 25%, remember, is the threshold, and that's the 25% or more are the beneficial owners considered by the threshold. Again, I don't have the ability to tell you you're exempted from that, or there's any other differences there, but you want to make sure that that you are adhering to what the regulations are. If you're a holding company and the holding company owns another company, do you file for both entities? The answer to that is going to be, it depends, because if you're a holding company that holds a bank, then probably not for that bank. But if that company that's being held by the holding company is not otherwise exempt, they do need to file a report for that additional company. There's a question about a trust, and I will say I don't know the answer to the trust question just yet. I was looking at something this morning. No, that was not related. I apologize. I don't know about the trust. Look back at the list of exemptions for specific information about the trust. Okay, this is a question about those deadlines and kind of a what if scenario. There was a partnership that was created prior to January 1st, 2024. In 2024, that partnership is being sold. Do I need to file a BOI for the partnership that is no longer in business? Yes. So it was in business. It was an active entity prior to January 1st of 2024. I need to file for that prior entity. Then there would be a new filing for the new partnership or the new ownership of that partnership that would do the process there. There's a question about inactive entity. Let's see. The question is, they've not filed articles. It's an inactive entity, so they're not a going concern. They've not filed articles of dissolution with the Secretary of State, but they're not actually doing any business. Do they need to file a beneficial owner information report? And I will say on that one, that's above my pay grade. That would be more of a specific advice scenario. I'll try to find an answer for that one though, as we go through this and try to reply to the person who asked that particular question. And that runs us to the end of our time here. So I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. I will have someone send the slide out to you. So do look for that as well. And I'll send it to everybody who's in the email list that registered for the session here today. Thanks for your attendance and thanks for being here. You will get also a survey. So please do respond to the survey and just let us know how we did in this particular presentation so we can adapt it for the next time. Thank you very much.